Hello everyone, this is Eduardo. I'm a mechanical engineer here at Saratech, and today I'm going to be showing you some tips and tricks you can use when working with an assembly. So we'll be working with this suspension assembly for this video. The first tip I have for you is how to quickly set your rotation reference on the fly. So typically, if you want to go ahead and inspect a certain part of the assembly and you want to rotate, you'll notice that if you just quickly rotate, it goes ahead and everything moves abruptly because the rotation reference is somewhere out in space. But if we want to manually change that rotation reference, we'll go ahead and right-click the environment and change it from here, from set rotation reference. So if we do that, we can go ahead and manually define where we want to rotate it about. So when we go ahead and use the middle mouse button, everything is cleaner. Okay, so now a quicker way to do that is instead of right-clicking the environment and setting the rotation reference from there, easier way to do it is by holding the middle mouse button until you see the cursor change. So notice we're going to do this without that cursor change. Okay, notice it's rotating about the top of the clevis there. However, if I hold on to the middle mouse button, notice how the cursor just changed, and now I'm rotating about that specific point. Okay, so we'll try that again here. So rotating, it's rotating about the wheel. If I hold, change that cursor, now it's rotating about that new clevis here. So that's a quick tip on how to quickly rotate your part whenever you're zooming into a specific location. Okay, the second tip I have here is how to set a toggle button for a transparency view. So for example, in this assembly, I'd like to have certain components be transparent, and I don't want to constantly turn them on and off or reset them. So instead of manually changing some of these visualizations here, what I would want to do is set up a translucency button. So first thing I want to do is set the translucency of these three components to 50. So we can do that by going to the Edit Display option. And from here, I can change that to 50. You'll see it updates on the screen. Okay, so now once we do that, the most common way people reset this is by going back, selecting all of them, going to Edit Display, and then turning this off. However, you can use the translucency command to just toggle them back on and on. Okay? So the translucency function is under the View tab within the Visualization group, and then under General. So if we click on that, you'll see it can toggle them on and off. Right? So that's a quick way to be able to quickly turn several components to be transparent. You can go ahead and analyze and inspect some of the interfaces, check for clearances, and then turn them back off. Okay? But to be even more efficient, one step further we can take is customize our ribbon here and add that translucency function next to the rest of our visualization tools. So here we have our ISO view, trimetric view function. We have our shaded views and show and hide. So if I want to customize this ribbon, I'll go ahead and right-click, go down to Customize. I can search for any command here. In this case, we'll want to look for translucency. And I can drag this and drop anywhere on my ribbon. So I always recommend having it right next to the views. So we can add this here. And now it's within our view group. So we can now use this as our on and off transparent button. Okay, tip number 3 I have is customizing your columns here within the model tree to gather some important information. So, in order to customize this, you'll want to right-click on the header, go down to columns, and you'll see there's a lot of different options here. Some of the most common ones I've seen are layers. So if you want to see what layers are turned on for this, for these components, you'll toggle that on. Weight is another useful parameter. I've also seen volume. I've seen checked out. If you're connected to Team Center, you'll see if it's checked out and by whom, and reference set as well. So if you have different references, different configurations, say you have a machine configuration and the final build configuration, you'll be able to see which is which here and change them. There's another YouTube video we have where you'll see how we can set different configurations. So if you're interested, go ahead and look at that video. And so one step further here is, if we look at this weight tab, you'll see that there's some values assigned to some of them, and some of the components don't have any values. So typically there's two things that happen, or two reasons why there's no values populating. One is there's no density or material applied to this component. But two, it could be that the save or update property on this component is turned off. So in order to turn this on, we'll want to open this individual part. We'll go to the properties by right-clicking, clicking properties. And if we go to that weight tab, you'll see that this is unchecked. So if we check update data on save, refresh this, you'll see the mass populate. So we click OK, and for this wheel sensor cover part, you'll see the new weight populate here. So we can go ahead and do that for all of them, whichever are applicable, and then you'll see the total weight of the assembly at the very top. Okay. And if there's different configurations with different weight, those will populate as well. So that's another useful tool. Okay. And the next tip I have for you while we're here at the model tree environment is working with constraints within this constraint navigator. So by default, you'll see that we have all our constraints pretty much outlined here by the order of timestamp. So a more useful way to read your constraints is by changing this group by constraints to group by components. So if you see this, it's a lot more easier to see what's constrained, what's not, what components are partially constrained, what are fixed. So we can click on our component here, and we'll highlight it down on our tree, and we can see that this is partially constrained. Now, if we expand this, we'll also see what's constrained, right? So this is a lot more useful than a long list of random constraints. So if we know what's fixed here, we can kind of work from there and start constraining our parts, right? So we have this rubber washer looking thing. So if we click on this, we see what's constrained, right? There's a concentric constraint assigned on the rubber mount, and there's a concentric constraint assigned on the washer to the rubber mount. So if we want to fully constrain this, we'll want to mate the interface between the clevis here and that face there. So we can go ahead and do that. But before we do that, sometimes it's not too obvious to see what needs to be constrained. And so a helpful thing to do is check the degrees of freedom of a part. So if we go to the Assemblies tab here, you'll see Show Degrees of Freedom under the component position. If you click on that and then click a specific part here, we'll say yes because it needs to load. Once it loads, it'll show you that the only constraint it needs is the radial constraint, or the clocking, basically, right? So that's very helpful. So if we try to move this part, you'll see that the only thing we can move is the rotation about this axis here, right? And it looks like everything else is fixed to this or related to this, so the rest of the assembly will move, right? Okay. So you can go ahead and assign your constraints and figure out what your degrees of freedom are. You can also see what's dependent. So say if I really want to go ahead and fix this, we can go ahead and assign that the aligned lock constraint to this. So when we align lock it, it goes ahead and fixes that axis constraint. So we won't have to worry about that. So this assembly was left partially constrained intentionally to see the mechanics and the dynamics of this assembly. So we'll leave it as is. And now you know where you can inspect the part. Some assemblies have a requirement where the parts must all be fully constrained. So you can kind of pick out from here to see what needs to be constrained, see what's fixed, and go from there. Okay, so that was pretty much a general look of how to be more efficient when working with an assembly. We take a look at, we talked about some of the rotation options. We talked about how to create a toggle button for transparent components, some customization to the columns, bringing out weight, bringing out reference sets, taking a look at what layers are applied. If you're connected to Team Center, see who's checked out what part, if it's updated. Also constraints, as you can see, there's different ways to handling constraints and organizing them. And taking a look at how they react in your assembly using the move component and the show degrees of freedom component. So hopefully this video was useful. Please, if you have any suggestions and questions, please comment down below and take a look at the other videos. Thank you.
Thanks for checking out our channel. If you like what you saw, make sure to like and subscribe down below so you don't miss out on any new videos. Follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter for the latest engineering news and information. And to see all of our upcoming events, please visit our website at saratech.com/events.